Hello, welcome back. Or if you happen to be new, my name is Delian. This is the channel where we explore becoming the main character of our own lives, which I believe we're all here to do. And this is the Enneagram series where I break down every type and what I believe their journey is towards transformation. So if this kind of content is interesting to you, helpful, or valuable in any way, I would love if you would like, subscribe, or comment. I live for the comments. Tell me about your experience with your Enneagram type, what you would nuance with what I'm saying. This is essentially what I feel like a living document of a channel where we get to explore together. So I can't wait to see you in the comments, and let's go ahead and start. And welcome, Enneagram 3's. So the way that I am doing this series is by using the formula that we would create a main character in a stories with. There's specific questions that need to be asked, and it just so happens that they line up really well with how we go about describing an Enneagram type, which is why I think being able to see Enneagram characters in stories go through their transformation process can be so valuable in understanding what it takes to be able to go from the wounded version of our Enneagram type to the healed version, the healed narrative. Because I believe that the Enneagram is simply the narrative we tell ourselves about who we are and the world. And there's, again, the wounded part and the healed part of that narrative. That's my current stance. And so when developing a character for a story, the first question that gets asked, probably because it's the most important, this is what's going to keep the character in motion, is what do they want? And what do Enneagram 3s want? Well, they want to be successful, admired, valued, to be someone worthy of recognition and respect. I believe that the wants come from the deep, deep want of having connection, of being inherently loved, inherently seen as valuable. I think this is the case for 2, 3s, and 4s in the bonding triad. So we'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. But then, developing a character, we must ask, what's their wound? What's getting in the way? How do they operate? Or what's the lie that they tell themselves, right? In storytelling, it's a lot of what's the disbelief they have? What's their altered sense of reality? And this shows up in every Enneagram type. And for 3s, it is who I am is not enough. I must become someone impressive, successful, accomplished in order to be loved, in order to have that connection. And then from here, I think this is how the vice shows up, because essentially the vice is something that is supporting us in that wound. And for 3s, the vice is self-deceit. And the self-deceit is that constant narrative of, if I achieve enough, become enough, and prove my value, I will finally know that I matter. And from this, they often perform, and I mean this both in the present, so they can put on a show, they can put on a presentation, but also they want to perform, as in they want to succeed, they want to have done the thing, have the outcome, and that this is what needs to happen in order to be loved. And from there, we look at their stance. What is the natural way that they go about moving towards what they want? And the 3s are in what's known as the independent stance, sometimes called assertive, sometimes called aggressive. I like independent. And that is the idea that they can move or not move based on what they have decided is their goal. And so for 3s, they are focused on moving towards their goals, moving towards their accomplishments, moving towards what would make them prove that they are worthy. And also they can use that independent stance to become a version of themselves that can be admired based on whatever circumstance that they are in. But the self-deceit shows up when they start believing that the performance is them. And it's not. Those are two separate things. Ask any 3 that was an athlete and got injured and had to go through an identity crisis. And so what is the Enneagram 3's fear? They fear being worthless. They fear failing. They fear being unsuccessful and having no value for what they have achieved. Every Enneagram 3 story, I shouldn't say every, a lot of the Enneagram 3 stories I'm thinking off the top of my head is that a 3 fails in such a massive way that they have to face who they are and ask themselves the question, do they believe they are worthy of love without the success, without having the achievement? That's really hard work. So with this wound, their vice, their independence, and then their fear, they also have their intelligence center. So the intelligence center is the natural way that they are adapting through the world, and this is the heart center, or known as the bonding center. I really like that terminology a lot more because I think that 2, 3s, and 4s, their intelligence is being able to connect, to engage with people. Again, and this is why it's called the feeling center, the heart center, because there's an engaging with somebody else and being able to say, this is how they feel, this is how I can make them feel, so that connection occurs, bonding. So this is the intelligence that 3s naturally have access to. And with all of those things, what is their strategy? How are they going to go about getting what they want with all of these aspects of themselves? And they are going to adapt themselves to the expectations to pursue success, to cultivate an image and accomplish goals. And they measure their worth. This is the strategy. I'll get what I want. I will be happy when I have become worthy of it through achievement and recognition. And what happens generally is that strategy stops working, or you burn out, or something happens, right? It's not giving you what you want. And so then you transform the wound. And I believe that the transforming of the wound is simply taking the wound and flipping it around. If you know Martha Beck's work, she talks about flipping the furies, and essentially those really loud thoughts in your head that can be negative or feel like they're bringing you down. It's like, ask yourself, what is the opposite of that thought? And I think when we can look at our wound, for 3s, who you are is not enough. You have to become somebody impressive and accomplished in order to be loved. You transform that by giving yourself the opposite story to believe in, which, by the way, I don't think happens in one go. I think this is where the work is. This is why this is Act 2. This is where we have to go through the training, right? And the new story, the healed story of the 3, is that I am valuable because of who I am, not because of what I have to accomplish. I do not have to perform some version of myself in order to deserve love and belonging. I am worthy of love and belonging as I am. And when they can move through that journey, then they start experiencing the virtue, which is authenticity, which is seeing the truth of who they are and knowing that the truth of who they are is worthy of love and acceptance, that they can just be and be loved. This does not mean that you give up achieving things or creating things. It is simply that you can do it from this healed space where you do not have to do that in order to have your nervous system be okay. And then you start to shift. This is the final transformation. This is when the butterfly gets its wings. You start creating and achieving from your true self rather than from this constant sense to prove your worth. And when you drop the performing of success, you actually start being able to express yourself, and the accomplishments you get from that space feel true. And this is the story of Enneagram 3's. There's so much more about the Enneagram that I want to dive into, along with deep dives into different characters from literature, movies, TV shows. So if there are characters that you have liked or maybe even disliked that you think are Enneagram 3's that you would love for me to do a delving into and exploring that character through the lens of the Enneagram, let me know. I would love to add them to my roster. If you found this video helpful, valuable, interesting, please like, comment, subscribe. It's all incredibly helpful for, I'm going to say it, the success of the channel. And I really appreciate all of the engagement, all of the support. It's meant so much. I love that I get to do something that feels so in alignment with what I love and that other people are also loving it. I'm just forever, forever grateful. So thank you. Definitely leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts. What would you nuance? What would you add? What resonated? It's all really helpful. I really do think that this is like a living document. We get to explore the Enneagram together. I'm sharing what I know as of now, but that does not mean that there is not more out there. And so I would love to know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So, all right, I will see you in the next video.